Hello again. We showed you the cover of this book. Most of you will be familiar with it. It's the official modern commentary of the Watchtower upon the book of Daniel. And I like its title. The one I had in the old days was Your Will Be Done on Earth. This one, though, tells you what to do with Daniel. And it's okay. Pay attention to Daniel's prophecy. But I would submit that the way they do the study, as usual, paragraph, quote, sometimes no quote at all, paraphrasing much of the story, much of the lessons of the book of Daniel, doesn't help you do this. It doesn't help you pay attention to the words of Daniel. The book itself helps you rather to get lessons. And those lessons are like this one. This is actually from the book, page 79, about what Nebuchadnezzar's take is upon the experience of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. What did he learn? Well, King Nebuchadnezzar was forced to acknowledge that Jehovah is the Most High God. Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, he declared. Well, they quoted him accurately. That's what he did say. They didn't insert the name in.
But that first sentence of their own plants the idea in your head that he actually proclaims the name Jehovah.
I'm afraid so.
In his statement.
A couple of pages over, page 81, they're quoting from a, well, here they don't say what he is. He's John F. Walvoord. And elsewhere in the book, a few pages before this, they say he is a scholar. Okay, what does this scholar say? John Walvoord writes, quote, "It was in effect a saluting of the flag, although because of the interrelationship of religious and national loyalties, it may also have had religious connotation." End of Walvoord quote. And then they say, "Today, true Christians take an equally firm stand against idolatry." Fine, so far. Then they say, "The Bible account of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego provides a sterling object lesson for all who are determined to render exclusive devotion to Jehovah." Well, again, exclusive devotion to Jehovah in the case of Daniel and in the case of the three companions does not mean using the name Jehovah, apparently. But being devoted and giving exclusive worship or ascribing exclusive worth to his character and his attributes, I think we can say they faithfully did that. So we should talk a little bit about this man Walvoord and actually go back to the original and find out what Walvoord originally said.
This quote is in this book. Daniel, the key to prophetic revelation. You were going to say something though about him?
Yeah. John Walvoord, scholar, was the president of Dallas Theological Seminary from 1952 to 1986. No one has had more influence upon the evangelical world in terms of interpretation of prophecy than Walvoord. So he's a scholar, all right, I'm not disputing that, but he's not the go-to guy if you're trying to do Daniel. Either if you want the conservative position, and there's several, by the way, on the book and its prophecies and its interpretation. There's several conservative positions on Daniel, but he's certainly not the go-to guy if you want the mainstream opinion or the so-called liberal opinion. But he is extremely influential because of this. His take on the rapture, the pre-tribulation rapture, has now become the take of most TV ministers through, I guess, the influence of Al Lindsay's
And we did
Planet Earth.
We did talk about him in another video.
Yeah, that's one of his more popular reads, but look at this one. Prophecy Knowledge Handbook. This is, for many conservatives, the book on prophecy. The Prophecy Knowledge Handbook. But you need to know that although he's fair to other positions, Walvoord's position on prophecy is Dallas. It is dispensational through and through. So, but he is a scholar, and you can learn a lot from him, but just don't take him as the last word on the book of Daniel or Revelation.
Yeah, we were talking somewhat about the fact that as to how the commentaries, how they're used by pastors, for sure, not always by Christians, but by pastors, how they're trained to read the Bible, study the Bible. So you made the strong point that they don't go first to commentaries. They go, or they're supposed to, they're trained to go first to the text itself, read the text, get firmly in their own mind what, the points, then to go to a concordance And when we left the Witnesses, the Watchtower had their own concordance, which now they've discontinued.
Apparently.
A great Bible tool.
Along with Insight Book, which they've discontinued too, I understand.
Yeah. But at least with the concordance, you can look up a word. We did this a lot when we left. We did witness, preach. Then you read all the scriptures that have those words in them. So this is a legitimate way of studying the Bible, because at least you're letting the Word speak for itself.
And of course, if you want more info, by the way, on the pastor's way of doing sermons and doing messages and doing research, go to the 66 Books series that we have on the channel, because there I talk about how I had to relearn how to study the Bible, and I started to see the pattern with the great expositors of the Bible was, especially if you know Greek and Hebrew, you do your work in the Greek and Hebrew first. You use your concordance, maybe in all three languages, English, Hebrew, and Greek. You use your concordance and you make the connections. And then, when you've finished all that spade work, you go to your favorite commentaries and see what they have to say.
So, this is a fault, too, with Christians, that oftentimes they go straight to the commentary.
Even some pastors.
Yeah, so really that isn't good Bible study method. So even though we recommend a lot of commentaries, a lot of teaching tools, because they are a blessing.
They are.
But make a distinction between the Word of God and the Word of man. So Christians have to do that too. It's not just the cultists that have to do that. We all have to differentiate between what we see in the Word, what we see someone explaining it to us says.
Now, I know we want to read the context of what Walvoord said, so there's a couple of sentences just before the quoted part that are helpful in understanding his position anyway.
Okay, so I'm starting a couple of sentences before the quote that you actually heard David read in the Watchtower's quote of his book. Such a display of officials was on the one hand a gratifying demonstration of the power of Nebuchadnezzar's empire, and on the other hand was significant as recognizing the deities who in their thinking were responsible for their victories. The worship of the image was intended to be an expression of political solidarity and loyalty to Nebuchadnezzar, rather than an intended act of religious persecution. It was in effect a saluting of the flag, although, because of the interrelationship of religious with national loyalties, it may also have had religious connotation.
I can see why they would want to leave out the first part and hang on to the flag section, because in America, at least, and many other nations, that is the symbol of solidarity with the power.
Right.
And it becomes the pledge, well, like the American Pledge of Allegiance, or the Canadian, we stand on guard for thee, even with religious language, as it is in other nations. So you can see why Walvoord says this could be complicated. He's not saying, though, as an American, and a conservative American at that, he's not saying, for us today, the flag issue is the issue. He's talking about the idolatry being the issue.
Yeah.
But he is saying that the solidarity with the monarch and the empire, therefore, this Pledge of Allegiance, this statement that you will stand on guard for your whatever, come what may, right or wrong.
Yeah, and unquestioning loyalty is a problem.
Unquestioning allegiance,
Yeah, anybody who asked you to do that, that is a problem.
So I suppose the thing that a Jehovah's Witness has to bring away from that statement, and what the Watchtower does with it, is what is the Watchtower, the kingdom that they are in solidarity with? What is the Watchtower, the org, asking of a Jehovah's Witness?
Yeah. We actually, when they changed their baptismal formula, which was different than when I was baptized, and they now have it say that you're really claiming allegiance to an organization. As I say, you're pledging to recognize them as God's Spirit-directed organization. Well, haven't they done the same thing then?
So they, as far as you're concerned, trot over the line.
Yes, I think that is definitely going over the line. You are now asking me to have unquestioning allegiance to an organization rather than God.
Yeah. So when they actually included this attachment to the organization in the baptismal formula, for me that was almost the
Yeah.
last straw
Yeah.
when I found out about it, because I thought to myself, no, in effect you've made the organization the third person of your own Trinity.
Yeah. And we didn't notice it when it happened. It was prior to our leaving.
Someone
Shortly
thinking
prior.
of getting baptized brought it to our attention.
Yeah. So it was a big shock.
So here's how the Watchtower sums up what they think of as the message of this passage, Daniel chapter 3. From page 80 in the Daniel book, it says, "Today, worshippers of Jehovah face circumstances similar to those of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Granted, God's people may not be exiles in a literal sense, yet Jesus said that his followers would be no part of the world." John 17:14. "They are foreigners in that they do not adopt the unscriptural customs, attitudes, and practices of those around them. As the Apostle Paul wrote, Christians are to quit being fashioned after this system of things." Romans 12 verse 2. So is that a suitable takeaway from chapter 3 of Daniel?
Well, not if you're gonna
Stress.
only if you're gonna ignore the fact that they were in politics.
Yeah.
And they have allowed their names to be changed, those parts which names were attached to foreign gods, pagan gods, the names themselves.
Yeah.
So they had a different way of marking where the line was for themselves. There was conscience involved here. It wasn't a dictate by Daniel or anybody else. You had to kind of base on what would be going over the line for me.
Yeah. In the next section we'll get to chapter 4, which after all is the chapter. If there's a go-to chapter in the book, this is the one that makes for their other badge. The name, which we've dealt with in the last 2 chapters of Daniel, is of course their biggest and proudest badge, but the other badge that sets them apart from all other faiths and all other systems of interpretation of the last things is their 1914 last days Armageddon scenario. So chapter 4 in the next segment.